Hello everybody. Today I am fresh out the workshop, hence being covered in dust and everything else. I'm going to do a video on US tariffs and how they affect our industry. So for those of you that purchase, in this case, Land Rover Defenders, but actually this video covers the wider range of classic vehicles. And when I say classic, I mean older than 25 years. It appears at the moment, and Donald Trump, if you're watching, thank you for this because it's helped our industry massively. It appears at the moment that the tariffs have not changed from 2.5% on import duty on vehicles older than 25 years old. And this is fantastic news for our industry, as the past couple of weeks have been a little concerning into what might happen once these tariffs were imposed. We were a little worried that we were going to be hit with the 27.5% like everybody else. So I am road testing G4 only because it's had a number of repairs in the past few days, and I'm just going to put it all together and check it out. Well, I'll talk to you a bit more about that in a minute. So G4 is a Land Rover Defender 110 that is not currently eligible for US export because it's too new. So this doesn't become eligible for a couple of years yet, at which point it will be heading to the US just like all of our other builds. But the tariffs thing honestly got me thinking, was this business going to be viable if there was a 27.5% import duty on classic vehicles? Because let's be honest, to hike your price up by 27.5%, or sorry, 25% was the incremental increase that they were proposing. Can you make something 25% more expensive overnight and still have people interested at the level that they were? And I think the answer is no. I think that these vehicles are already very, very expensive because of the amount of time that goes into restoring them. And to make them 25% more expensive makes it an absolute nightmare to purchase. It makes you question, I suppose, whether or not it's something that's worth doing for a classic car. With all the recent news coming out about the new US tariffs on imported goods, especially from China, it's no surprise that people are wondering if classic car imports are about to get a lot more expensive. In particular, and at least more in tune with what I do, classic Land Rovers. That's really what I'm going to focus this video on. However, all vehicles 25 years and older by US law are considered classic vehicles. So for argument's sake, we will just wrap this whole thing up as classic vehicles as a whole. But here's the good news. Classic vehicles like the Land Rovers that we export from the UK are not affected by the new tariffs. The import duty for classic cars remains at just 2.5%, exactly where it's been. That is with the exception of the chicken tax vehicles, which are light commercial vehicles, so any van-derived vehicle or anything like that. But I'll talk more about the chicken tax in a minute. Bit of a funny story. Quite relevant to today's issue with the tariffs, as it is a tariff charge that was imposed by the US on West Germany and France because of a retaliation tariff. So quite similar to what's going on in the world right now. So what does that mean if you're thinking about buying a restored Land Rover from us, or just in fact anybody? It means that the prices stay stable, no big jumps, no surprise fees. We're still able to deliver these trucks at the same competitive pricing that we've always aimed for. And considering the quality of what we build here, that's a strong position to be in, especially with everything else in the world feeling a bit unpredictable right now. Over the past few years, we've seen values of restored classic Land Rovers increase by as much as 20%, especially in the US. One customer in particular who owned a vehicle that I produced for 2 years recently had us sell the vehicle for them on a consignment sale, and we actually made nearly 30% more than the sale price of that vehicle the second time round. So that was after 2 years of use, with some miles on it, some memories created, and everything else that goes with purchasing a restored Defender. We were able to not only return them the money they'd initially invested, but also a profit. Especially now, considering that the demand for reliable, everyday, drivable classics is growing substantially. Just a run down to the port the other day to deliver a vehicle for export just blew my mind with how many vehicles were on the side of the dock there waiting to be exported to the US. And that's the thing about Land Rovers in particular. I believe Land Rovers have a unique edge. They're rugged, they're simple to maintain, they're modern enough in their design that they're just not garage queens like some of the other classic vehicles. They're classics that you can live with and drive daily. So that's the significant difference between a Defender and something like a classic Maserati, or even something that's you know, an investment vehicle. It depreciates in value the more you use it, unlike a Defender that doesn't tend to depreciate much after the initial purchase. When you compare them to other classics, cars that need babying or constant tuning, a well-restored Land Rover is just practical, and that's why we've seen such a strong resale appreciation over the years. And looking at it as an investment, it's not just emotionally satisfying to own a Land Rover, but actually makes pretty good financial sense to purchase a vehicle, a classic vehicle in general, but in at least my experience, a Defender as an investment vehicle. Now look, I get it, importing a vehicle is a big decision, but the landscape hasn't shifted against buyers, it's still on your side. And with us handling the restoration and export process from start to finish, it's never been easier. If you've been on the fence, this might just be your sign to reach out, leave a comment, or shoot me a message. And if you just want to talk tariffs and how that affects purchasing a classic vehicle, I'm more than happy to talk to you about it. We've got some exciting builds in the pipeline, and I'd love to get you behind the wheel of one. So just touching bases quickly on the chicken tariff thing, which has been in place for a long time, so it's nothing new, but it actually in a good turn of events is pretty relevant to today's problem with the tariffs and the retaliation tariffs. But I'm just reading this from Google, so this is not something I'm coming up with. This is something I Googled earlier, as I knew about it but didn't really know the full story. It says that the chicken tax is a 25% tariff on imported light trucks into the US. It was established in 1964 to retaliate against European tariffs on American chicken exports. While it originally targeted potato starch, brandy, dextrin and trucks, the truck tariff is the only one that remains today. This tariff has significantly impacted the US truck market, limiting the availability of foreign-made light trucks, especially compact models, and favouring larger domestic produced trucks. So in Europe, and pretty much globally actually, thinking about it, we have a lot of compact utility vehicles. So we have lots of small vans and things that are great, I guess, for us. I mean, we can kind of get around and do smaller jobs in much more economical vehicles. And that's what it's talking about. Well, how does this affect Land Rovers? Land Rover did actually produce a number of utility vehicles, including pickups and van-derived vehicles, including a 110 just like this one, which is a station wagon without the rear seats, that was considered a utility commercial vehicle. So those vehicles have a 25% additional fee on them, or 25% in total duty on import. So that does make for a significant increase in the price on those vehicles if you decide to pick a commercial variant vehicle to import to the US. The chicken tax makes importing foreign-made classic light trucks significantly more expensive, limiting the variety of availability on these vehicles for collectors. The limited import options have made certain models of imported classic trucks more desirable and more valuable, particularly those that are harder to find due to the chicken tax. Which is quite funny, isn't it? Because you would never have had these vehicles because of this chicken tax. I suppose what this would have done to the industry back then is meant that any manufacturer that was producing a light commercial vehicle probably would not have marketed that vehicle in the US, which meant you guys didn't get it. Right, let's get some driving done. Let's actually do this road test. So just going on to G4, I bought this vehicle from about 2.5 hours away, and in true fashion decided not to road test it when picking it up. Because the vehicle was so clean, I just went with it, and obviously I have the ability to repair things that some people don't, which makes purchasing these vehicles a little less scary for me than potentially you. But what that meant is that within the first 15 minutes I'd realised that there was something mechanically wrong with the car, in that it was massively underpowered and it had horrendous death wobble on the steering wheel. And death wobble is a well-known Land Rover fault. Is when the steering wheel violently shakes left to right, normally at about 50 miles an hour. But I had to drive it back the 2.5 hours all the same. Got it home, and I've spent the last 4 days trying to fix it, and it was almost as if just about every sensor on this car that could have been reading incorrectly was reading incorrectly, including a fault that took me nearly a full day to diagnose, as I'd never seen it before. So this vehicle is a TD5, which is the next generation of Land Rover that the US is about to start seeing more of. It's arguably one of the best and most loved Land Rover engines that were put into a vehicle, and I'm not totally sure why. I think it could be at least my opinion is that the characteristics of it being a 5-cylinder turbo diesel meant that the tuning potential was much higher than any Land Rover before it, as it was electronic fuel injection, far more modern type of engine that was capable of producing, and I've seen figures up to 340 horsepower in a TD5 and stacks of torque, which make for a hell of a car. But this is the kind of vehicle that you're going to start to see more of as the 300 TDI starts to fizzle out a little bit into its, I suppose, end of line run. TD5s are going to start to hopefully take its place. I've seen these vehicles at phenomenal mileage as well before, which is, I mean, says a lot about the reliability. Although BMW owned Land Rover at the time of production, the vehicle itself, being built, manufactured in the UK by BMW owners, meant that it had BMW engine technology. And the engine itself is derived from a Rover engine and not Land Rover. This might be worth a Google. Rover, a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel engine that was produced a long time ago, was redeveloped by BMW to include a 5th cylinder. And that fifth cylinder increased the capacity from 2 litre to 2,500 cc, which is 2.5 litres. Made the car have some very interesting characteristics. The noise being the first one, they sound absolutely incredible. Where was I going with that? Anyway, the vehicle was massively underpowered when I bought it. Now that I've repaired all of that, it's back at its factory setting. Now, its factory setting is nothing exciting. It made about 122 horsepower, give or take. Was not a particularly fast car, but it was built to fit within Euro emissions regulations. Now, I've got a little bit of information on that on my website blog. If you wanted to follow that, I'll try and include a link somewhere around here. But it strangled the engine. It literally grabbed hold of the engine's throat and held it so it could barely breathe. All of that can be changed very easily, and every TD5 that I've ever produced comes out of my workshop with all of that undone, because it's just not necessary. A lot of it is just stuff that was imposed on us by the European Union that isn't required. I mean, this vehicle's 25 years old. Its carbon footprint is tiny. It's been on the planet long enough that it is offsetting probably electric cars 10 to 1, as there are no materials going into this car or its production, especially not lithium or mining or anything else that's involved with these electric cars, which are the death of the automotive world. However, I do want to look into producing an electric Land Rover, so I might go back on that comment, like your orange-faced leader does quite a lot. He goes back on the things he says. Anyway, not to get political. So this engine is by far one of my favourites. It's something that I enjoy working on, something I find quite simple. As the electronic part of this engine is really not very complex at all. So the parts that make this engine better can still be worked on by anybody, in my opinion. And it's so much smoother. It's just the power take, and what I was trying to aim for was to get this vehicle back to as good as new before I started the tuning process. So we tune these vehicles quite heavily and well within safe limits, and it transforms the vehicle, honestly it does. But what normally people would do to combat some of these running problems is just map the vehicle, which masks some of the original faults. However, I am happy that this vehicle is exactly how it should have been 25 years ago, or 23 years ago. This is a 2002 model that will be eligible for export in a couple of years' time, so just short of 2 years. At which point we'll market the vehicle. The G4 Challenge, I'll talk a bit more about that on another video, because that's a cool topic to go over. It comes from originally the Camel Trophy, which is again a very cool iconic Land Rover Global Adventure series, which I think just carved these vehicles into being some of the most iconic vehicles on the road. But all in, as it stands today, and I hope I don't have to change my wording on this at a later date, we've been very fortunate that our industry hasn't been hit hard by US tariff increases. Not to say that that might not happen in the future once Trump has had a think about some of the gains, I suppose, there might be from this industry, but it's such a small industry that it would affect everybody in such a massive way. But now is a fantastic time to invest in a classic Land Rover, as these vehicles are only going up in value. There was only a finite number of them produced, and in 2016, 25 years after that, there are no more. So what I'm trying to say to you all is if you were on the fence about purchasing a classic vehicle, in particular a Land Rover Defender, there is no better time than now to get on that bandwagon. I hope this video has helped inform you slightly on what's going on in the world with Land Rovers and classic car exports and imports, as it would have been a real shame to have called it a day based on a 25% increase in import duty. With any luck, and this is a big fingers crossed moment from me here in the UK, a trade deal is struck where US vehicles are more affordable in the UK, as they're currently hit with a 20% tariff as they come in. I would love to start seeing some more US made vehicles in the UK. Having owned a number of US vehicles over the years, I think you guys have got the car culture entirely correct, and that big V8s and everything that goes with those are, I think, what makes cars a very, very cool thing to own. Now, hopefully our two countries can get their acts together, play nicely, and everybody can benefit from it. I just had to stop. I drove past this on the way in. I had to stop and just have a look at this unreal camper setup. This lovely couple have been travelling Europe in this thing for a number of years. They are van life to the max. Just look at it. This is an old DAF with a Cummins 6BT in it. Doesn't that thing look mean? This is the second extreme camper that I've seen in the past couple of weeks. The Mercedes Vario that was in the workshop, and this arguably being far more capable than the Mercedes. But yeah, ex-military vehicle, ex-UK military vehicle, and then G4. We're just chatting to them about their travels and what they've got up to. Yeah, very cool. Lovely dog in there, and they are full-time van life with the wife that works remotely, which is cool. That seems to be a trend these days. Anyway, back to the workshop. If I can make this camera stay still. There we go. Right, back to the workshop. Very quick code scan on G4. And then that is this video over. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon if you want to be alerted about new videos coming out. And I'm going to finish off this road test on what appears to be another beautiful day in paradise with blue skies and warm temperatures.